If you need everyone to like you, you've already lost respect. Because the moment you start performing for approval, you stop being a man people respect and start becoming a man people use. Weak men try to impress everyone. Powerful men impress no one and still get respect. That's the difference. And most of you won't admit which one you are. You think being liked is power. You think being agreeable makes you respected. You think constant effort to prove yourself earns status. It doesn't. It exposes need. And need is the fastest way to lose authority in any room. If your personality changes depending on who you're around, you're not socially intelligent, you're socially dependent. Weak men study reactions. Powerful men study outcomes. There's a reason some men walk into a room and instantly command space without saying much. They're not trying to impress anyone, they're trying to accomplish something. When a man stops performing, people start observing. And when people start observing, they begin assigning value. But if you're constantly performing, joking too much, talking too much, explaining too much, trying too hard, you destroy mystery. And without mystery, there is no perceived power. If you're always trying to impress, you're admitting you're not enough. That's the hidden message. Every time you over-explain your success, every time you try to sound smarter, every time you name-drop, flex subtly, or seek approval, you're telling the world, please validate me. Powerful men never ask for validation directly or indirectly. They don't need to, because their identity is not built on external reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote privately to himself, not to impress an audience. A man running an empire, still focused on internal discipline over external applause. That's power. Internal authority over external noise. Let's call out the most common male weakness, the urge to be liked by everyone. At work, weak men try to impress bosses and co-workers simultaneously. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They agree with opinions they don't respect. They overcommit to look reliable. They overtalk to look competent. But watch closely. The man who tries to please everyone becomes invisible in terms of authority. He's liked, but he's not respected. There's a difference. Liked men get extra tasks. Respected men set boundaries. Liked men get used. Respected men get considered. Weak men choose likability over leverage, and then wonder why they're never taken seriously. You don't get respect for being impressive, you get respect for being solid. Impressing is performance, solid is identity. When you try to impress, you become reactive. You watch faces, you monitor responses, you adjust constantly. That's not confidence, that's insecurity with good posture. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be seen as foolish or stupid. Not because you are, but because you're no longer performing for approval. Weak men fear being misunderstood. Powerful men accept it as the price of authenticity. Weak men try to impress women immediately. They show off money, they show off humor, they show off knowledge, they show off lifestyle. It's predictable, and predictability kills attraction. The more you try to impress, the more you communicate that her approval determines your value. That flips the power dynamic instantly. A powerful man doesn't try to impress. He observes, he listens, he decides. He knows that attraction built on performance collapses when performance stops. But attraction built on presence stays. If your entire interaction is designed to win approval, you're negotiating from below, and women feel that immediately. Not because they're calculating, because need has a frequency, and it's loud. If rejection scares you, you're already controlled. Weak men perform to avoid rejection. Powerful men remain grounded regardless of outcome. There's a difference between wanting connection and needing validation. One is human, the other is dependency. If your mood collapses because someone doesn't approve of you, you don't have emotional control, you have emotional exposure. Seneca talked about emotional independence as the foundation of strength, not coldness, control. When you stop needing approval, your behavior stabilizes. When your behavior stabilizes, your presence becomes predictable in the best way. Calm, grounded, unreactive. That's attractive everywhere. Work, relationships, life. Weak men compete for attention within their own friend group. They interrupt. They exaggerate stories. They seek laughs constantly. They try to be the most entertaining. Why? Because attention feels like respect. It's not. Attention is temporary. Respect is structural. The man who talks the most rarely leads. The man who seeks validation rarely commands. Watch any group carefully. There's always one man who speaks less, observes more, and doesn't chase reactions. When he speaks, everyone listens. Why? Because he doesn't waste words trying to impress. Scarcity creates weight. Weak men flood the room with words. Powerful men place them strategically. Every time you overperform, you reduce your value. If you always say yes, your yes becomes meaningless. If you always joke, your humor loses edge. If you always explain, your words lose authority. Restraint builds presence. Most men think they need to do more to gain respect. In reality, they need to stop doing unnecessary things. Stop over-talking. Stop over-explaining. Stop over-committing. Stop over-performing. Power grows in restraint. Epictetus emphasized control over impulses, not suppression. Control. When you control your need to impress, you control your image naturally. Weak men chase status signals. Powerful men build internal standards. Weak men wear brands to be noticed. Powerful men wear simplicity comfortably. Weak men mention connections. Powerful men build competence. When you try to signal status constantly, you reveal insecurity about your position. True status doesn't need constant advertisement. It shows in posture, speech, boundaries, decisions. A man who is secure doesn't rush to prove it. He lives it. You're not tired from working hard. You're tired from performing constantly. Trying to impress everyone is exhausting. You monitor your tone, your jokes, your appearance, your responses, your social media, your conversations. It's a full-time psychological job, and it drains masculine energy. Powerful men simplify. They focus on competence, discipline, results, self-respect. When those are solid, external impressions take care of themselves. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself, focus on what you can control, your actions, your mind, your discipline, not other people's opinions. Because opinions change, character compounds. Let's get brutally honest. Some of you don't even know who you are without an audience. Your personality is built around reaction. You're funnier around certain people, more confident around others, more submissive around authority, more dominant around weaker men. That's not adaptability. That's instability. Powerful men are consistent across environments, not identical, but grounded. They don't reshape themselves for approval. They adjust strategy, not identity. If your identity shifts constantly, people sense it, and unstable identity cannot command stable respect. If you need recognition for everything you do, you're still operating like a child. Children perform for praise. Men operate from standards. Weak men want credit. Powerful men focus on long-term positioning. At work, the man who quietly delivers results becomes indispensable. The man who seeks acknowledgement becomes replaceable, because one is focused on output, the other is focused on applause. Applause doesn't build power. Consistency does. Here's the uncomfortable truth most won't say. Trying to impress everyone is a survival strategy learned from insecurity. Maybe you grew up needing approval. Maybe you were ignored unless you performed. Maybe you equated likability with safety. But that mindset doesn't create power as a man. It creates dependency, and dependency gets exploited in adult life. People sense who needs approval, and they withhold it strategically. That keeps you chasing. Powerful men break that cycle. They give themselves approval through discipline and standards, not arrogance. Internal validation. When you stop trying to impress, some people will drift away. Let them. They were never aligned with your growth. They were aligned with your performance. The moment you stop entertaining, pleasing, and overgiving, the dynamic changes. Some will respect you more. Some will distance themselves. Some will test you. Good. That's information. Seneca warned that when you pursue wisdom and strength, you separate from the crowd naturally. Not because you hate them, because your priorities change. And priority shift always reveals who was benefiting from your old behavior. Imagine this. You stop trying to impress at work. You speak only when necessary. You deliver results consistently. You set calm boundaries. You don't chase office politics. At first, people might misread you. Then they start respecting you, because consistency without performance feels powerful. Now imagine with women. You stop trying to prove value. You stop oversharing. You stop seeking constant validation. You stay calm and grounded regardless of reaction. Suddenly, interactions feel different because you're not negotiating for approval anymore. You're evaluating alignment. That shift changes everything. The more you respect yourself, the less you need to impress anyone. Self-respect eliminates performance anxiety. When you know your value internally, you don't rush to display it externally. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You focus on being effective. Powerful men choose effectiveness over likability every time, because effectiveness builds long-term status. Likability builds temporary comfort, and comfort rarely creates power. Weak men try to impress everyone because they fear being overlooked. Powerful men accept being misunderstood because they know their worth isn't negotiable. Stop performing, start building. Build discipline, build competence, build emotional control, build standards. Let your actions speak quietly and consistently. The less you chase approval, the more respect you naturally command. And one day you'll notice something subtle. You're no longer trying to impress anyone, but everyone is watching you differently. That's when you know you've shifted, not into arrogance, into quiet authority. So ask yourself honestly, are you living to impress or living to become undeniable? Choose carefully, because the man who stops performing for the world is the man the world eventually takes seriously. If this hit harder than motivation ever did, good. That means you're ready to operate differently. Subscribe if you're done chasing approval and ready to build real power.